I woke up to the sound of laughter outside my door. Muffled, careful, like they didn't want me to hear. The kind of laughter people use when they're hiding something. My clock said 6:04 a.m. The house smelled like perfume and hot curling irons. Suitcases rolled across the hallway. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard my sister's voice. Hi, Giddy. The sound of everything I wasn't invited to. Mom, did you pack the champagne? Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My stomach tightened. I threw on a hoodie, opened the door, and froze. Down the hallway, my mom stood in her pink robe, talking to the driver who was loading bags into a black SUV. My sister Harper, the bride, was laughing with her bridesmaids, all in matching silk pajamas that said Bride Tribe. Mom, I said, voice still half asleep. What's happening? Where's everyone going? She jumped a little, like she hadn't expected me to wake up. Then she smiled, that guilty, polite smile that always came before she lied. Oh, honey, you're up. We're just heading to the Grandstone Hotel for the family stay before the wedding. The family stay? I repeated. And what am I? There was silence. Just the sound of a zipper closing and a door shutting. My mother sighed. Emily, it's only for the immediate family and the wedding party. You know how stressful this weekend is going to be. We thought it'd be better if you rested here. I stared at her. I'm your daughter, her sister. What could possibly make sense about leaving me behind? She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was comforting a child. Let's not do this now. You've always had a different energy, sweetheart. You tend to make things heavier. I don't want drama before your sister's big day. That's when I noticed something in her hand, a small white sign. She hung it on my doorknob without meeting my eyes. Do not disturb. I don't know what broke me more, the words or how normal she made it look. By the time I reached the window, the SUV's taillights were already fading down the street. Harper's voice carried through the open trunk. Make sure my dress doesn't wrinkle. Followed by laughter. They left me. My mother, my sister, all of them. And they made sure I couldn't even say goodbye. For a long moment, I just stood there, barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, staring at the empty driveway. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. Something colder was building under my ribs, quiet, focused, sharp. I looked at that do not disturb sign and whispered to myself, fine, you didn't want me there, but you'll see me anyway. A slow, calm smile crept onto my face. Not as the girl you left behind, but as the woman you never saw coming. By the time the morning sun burned through the blinds, my tears had dried. I wasn't sad anymore. Just awake, wide awake, in a way I hadn't been in years. The mirror across the room showed a woman I barely recognized. Messy hair, puffy eyes, hoodie hanging off one shoulder. But behind that reflection, something new glimmered, something like steel. I walked to my closet, pulled out the gray box at the back, and opened it. Inside were the things I'd buried along with my old self, a navy blue blazer, my work ID from Whitaker Innovations, and a silver card embossed with my name, Emily Rose Whitaker, co-founder. That name wasn't just decoration. It was the proof that I'd built a life no one in my family had ever cared to ask about. They still thought I was struggling to find direction, the same girl who'd once worked part-time at a diner while Harper got designer internships through mom's friends. What they didn't know was that I'd worked under Daniel Whitaker for 3 years, helped him rebuild his company from the ground up, and when he retired, he left me half his empire. So when they said family only, I laughed. Because tomorrow, when Harper said, I do, in her designer gown and mom smiled proudly from the front row, I'd be sitting in the same hotel ballroom, but not as who they remembered. I spent the next few hours preparing. My old self wouldn't show up in a hoodie. She'd walk in like thunder wrapped in silk. By noon, I was at the boutique downtown, the one with glass doors and quiet jazz humming inside. The sales associate's eyes widened when I stepped in. Ms. Whitaker? She asked. We haven't seen you in months. I need something for a wedding, I said simply. Something that doesn't apologize for showing up. 2 hours later, I had it, a long, fitted midnight blue gown that shimmered under light but demanded silence when I moved. Classy, elegant, commanding. No cleavage, no show, just power stitched into fabric. I checked my phone. 6:10 p.m. The wedding was at 7. Perfect. I arrived at the Grandstone Hotel as the sun melted behind the skyline. The building glowed gold, tall and expensive, the kind of place my mother used to say wasn't for our kind. I stepped out of the car, heels clicking on marble, head high. Inside, chandeliers burned bright like daylight. Guests in tuxedos and gowns laughed, took pictures, sipped champagne. And at the far end of the room, there they were, my mother, her hair pinned into perfection, laughing with Harper, who looked every bit the princess in white lace. For a moment, the air in my lungs turned to stone. Seeing them so happy after deliberately locking me out hit hard. But then Harper turned, her smile faltering as she saw me. "Emily," she said, disbelief dripping from her voice. "What are you doing here?" Every head nearby turned. I smiled calmly. "I'm just here to congratulate my family," I said, voice steady but carrying through the room. "After all, it's not every day your sister gets married." Mom's lips tightened. "We didn't think you'd come." "Of course not," I said softly, stepping closer. "You made sure of that, remember? The sign? Do not disturb?" A few guests murmured. Harper shifted uncomfortably, glancing at her friends. "Emily, please don't make a scene." "Relax," I said, still smiling. "I'm not here to ruin your perfect day." Before she could respond, a voice came from behind me. "Mrs. Whitaker, we've prepared your table in the front row." Every jaw around us dropped. Mom's eyes widened. "Mrs. Who?" I turned slightly, meeting the event coordinator's gaze. "Thank you, Ava," I said warmly. The woman nodded, then turned to the guests. "This is Mrs. Emily Whitaker, one of the major sponsors of tonight's event." Gasps. Whispers. Even Harper's groom, Colton, blinked like he'd seen a ghost. "Wait," Mom stammered. "You're—" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Not the girl you left sleeping this morning." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. The rest of the night moved in slow motion. I watched Harper walk down the aisle, glowing under chandeliers that I had unknowingly helped pay for. My company had sponsored the hotel's new conference wing, the very one this wedding was using. The irony wasn't lost on me. When the ceremony ended, I stayed quiet, polite, composed. But during the reception, when it was time for speeches, the microphone found its way into my hand. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice calm, collected. "I'm Emily, the sister who wasn't on the guest list this morning." A few laughs of discomfort rippled through the crowd. Harper froze, her smile glued in place. "But I'm here now," I continued, "because sometimes life has a funny way of giving back what others try to take away. I may not have been invited, but I'm grateful, because being left behind pushed me to become who I am today." I glanced at Mom, the kind of woman who doesn't need a family's permission to belong. The room fell quiet. For the first time, my mother looked small. Harper stared at her hands. I smiled gently. I wish my sister and her husband happiness, loyalty, and courage, especially the courage to never make someone feel invisible. As I set the mic down, the crowd applauded, hesitant at first, then louder. When I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall, tall, composed, untouchable. The woman who once cried over a "Do Not Disturb" sign was gone. And as I walked past my mother's table, I leaned close enough for her to hear one last whisper. "You should have woken me up." The wedding ended with applause and champagne, but the smiles that followed me weren't celebration. They were whispers, sharp and quiet. As the crowd drifted out, Harper stayed frozen near the dance floor, her perfect curls trembling slightly. Mom didn't say a word all night. Not when the band played. Not when the guests congratulated me instead of her. By the time the lights dimmed, my presence had cracked their picture-perfect world. And I didn't need to raise my voice to do it. I didn't stay for dessert. I didn't pose for photos. I just nodded to the event manager and walked out, calm, graceful, unstoppable. The night air outside the grandstand felt clean, almost electric. I didn't look back at the ballroom. I didn't need to. The damage wasn't loud. It was silent, cold, permanent. The next morning, I checked out early. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a flash of Harper in the lobby, still in her bridal robe, dark circles under her eyes, arguing quietly with our mother. Her voice cracked. She embarrassed me in front of everyone. I didn't smile. I didn't even blink. I just pressed the ground floor button and whispered, "No, Harper." I reminded them I exist. Outside, sunlight hit the polished hood of a black car waiting by the curb. My driver stepped out, opening the door. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitaker," he greeted. "Morning, Ryan," I said, sliding into the back seat. "Let's go to the office." I wasn't done, because the truth was, last night wasn't revenge. It was revelation. The real reckoning was still waiting. At Whitaker Innovations, the glass building shimmered in the morning light. Employees stopped mid-conversation when they saw me walk in. My assistant, Lauren, hurried over, holding a tablet. "Morning, Emily. The press requests came in from the wedding. You're trending. People are calling you the mysterious guest who stole the show." I let out a quiet breath, half a laugh. "Let them talk." She hesitated. "There's more. Your mother called the office. Twice." I raised an eyebrow. "And she wants to meet. Said it's urgent." I nodded. "Good. Let's give her 10 minutes of my very busy day." Lauren smiled carefully. "I'll tell reception." When my mother walked into my office an hour later, she looked smaller than I remembered, hair undone, voice tight, holding her purse like a shield. "This is impressive," she said quietly, looking around. "You've done well for yourself." I leaned back in my chair. "You sound surprised." "I suppose I am," she admitted, forcing a smile. "You never told us any of this, Emily." "You never asked," I replied. She sighed, sitting down. "Look, about yesterday, maybe we could have handled it better, but you hung a do not disturb sign on your own daughter's door." I didn't raise my voice. "You left without waking me." "That wasn't a mistake, Mom. That was a message." Her lips trembled. "We thought you'd make Harper nervous. She always felt overshadowed by you, even when you didn't try. I just wanted one weekend without conflict." "So you erased me?" "Don't say it like that. How else should I say it?" I cut in. "You made me invisible to keep her comfortable. That's not peace, Mom. That's cowardice dressed as kindness." She blinked, caught between guilt and defense. I was trying to hold our family together. I stood up, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her. "Then, why does it feel like you only held on to the parts you liked?" She didn't answer. For a long moment, the silence between us was heavy, like all the years she'd chosen not to see me pressing down at once. Then I spoke softly. "I'm not angry anymore. I just learned something from all this. Family isn't the people who share your last name. It's the people who don't leave you sleeping while they celebrate together." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't reach out. "Not this time. You made me an outsider in my own home," I said quietly. "Now I'm just giving you what you wanted, distance." She looked up. "Emily, please. Don't cut us out." I took a deep breath, then said something I'd rehearsed all night. "I'm not cutting anyone out. I'm just not waiting by locked doors anymore." Her lips parted to speak, but I was already walking toward the window. The city skyline gleamed outside, high, bright, alive. "I have meetings to attend," I said finally. "If you'd like to stay for lunch, Lauren will arrange something." But she didn't stay. She left quietly, just like she had that morning. Only this time, I was the one who closed the door. That evening, as the office emptied, I stood alone by the glass wall watching the sun fade. My phone buzzed, a text from Harper. "Harper, you didn't have to humiliate Mom. She's been crying all day. She taught me how to handle silence. I just returned the lesson. Harper, you've changed." No. I just stopped apologizing for existing. I put my phone down and smiled faintly. Outside, City lights blinked on one by one, glowing reminders that even in darkness, something always rises. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the quiet one, the one told to not make it harder. I was the woman who walked into the same ballroom they once locked me out of, and made the entire world remember my name. And I hadn't even started yet. A week later, Charleston buzzed with quiet gossip. The story of the sister who showed up uninvited and stole the spotlight had spread faster than champagne at a wedding. But behind the gossip, something deeper happened. A shift in the air. People who once looked through me now looked at me. I didn't chase the attention. I didn't post, explain, or justify. I just worked. Mornings at Whitaker Innovations turned into 12-hour days, and every decision I made reminded me how far I'd come from the girl who once needed permission to belong. Still, part of me waited for one call, one text, one apology. None came. Until Thursday. I was in a meeting when Lauren knocked gently. "Emily, it's your sister. She's here." My chest tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Send her in." Harper stepped inside, heels clicking, hands trembling slightly. Gone was the picture-perfect bride. The woman standing before me looked like she hadn't slept since the wedding. "You look different," I said softly. "So do you," she whispered. "Everyone's been talking about you. Mom hasn't stopped crying." I sighed. Crying because she's sorry? Or crying because people finally saw the truth? She flinched. "You think you're the only one who got hurt? I wanted you there, I begged Mom to invite you." "Then why didn't you?" Her voice cracked. "Because she said you'd ruin everything." And I believed her. The room went still. The city noise outside faded until all I could hear was the pulse in my chest. I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the streets below. "You know what's funny, Harper? You always said I was dramatic. But when you and Mom left me behind, that was the most dramatic thing you could have done. You turned your own sister into a ghost." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to." "I know. I cut in. But you did. And that's the difference between intent and impact. You didn't mean to, but you did it anyway because it was easier than standing up for me." Her lip trembled. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing," I said quietly, turning back to her. "Just learn from it. Next time you see someone standing alone, don't walk away." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped closer, eyes wet. "Can we start over?" I studied her face, the one that once carried all the praise I was denied, and for the first time, I didn't feel envy. Just peace. "I already did," I said simply. "I started over the day you left without waking me." She nodded slowly, understanding what I meant, that forgiveness didn't mean returning to the same table. It meant building my own. When she left, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. That night, I drove back to the old house, the one where the "Do Not Disturb" sign still hung on my door. The paint was peeling, the porch light flickered, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing but gratitude for the silence inside. I took the sign off the knob, folded it neatly, and tucked it into my coat pocket. Not as a wound, as proof. Proof that sometimes being shut out is the greatest invitation to begin again. As I walked away, the wind brushed against my hair, carrying a faint echo of laughter. But it didn't sting anymore. I wasn't the forgotten sister. I wasn't the quiet one. I was the woman who turned rejection into revelation. And from that night on, no door, no family, no fear, no past could ever put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on me again.